I was new to a team, and a woman on the team that I was working with said to me, you have so much passion and energy, you kind of are intimidating the team. And being a new teammate, like when I heard you're intimidating, that goes against all of my core values. You're listening to Leading Well, the podcast for executive women and the men who support them, who are ready to lead with clarity, confidence, and compassion. I'm your host, Gretchen Schott. Let's dive in. Hey friends, thanks for being here. Today I want to talk about feeling small. Even the most accomplished women, those running high-performing teams, companies, entire industries, still have moments when they feel small. Not because they aren't capable, but because of the subtle and maybe not so subtle messages that they receive from others or that they tell themselves. As I've thought through my own kind of career journey and my leadership journey, I know there have been times when I have felt very small. And when we think about feeling small, I like to think about this in a couple ways. One, there's like this inner voice, the things that we say to ourselves that make us feel small. And then there's the outer voice, which are things that people say to us that we interpret and make ourselves feel small. And from that, there's a core impact that comes from a place of feeling overlooked, resentful, undervalued. So let me talk first about this inner voice and how we make ourselves feel small. The inner voice is that voice within you that says things like, if I say no, they're going to think I'm not committed. Or I shouldn't speak up. Or I don't belong at this table. Or I don't belong at this event, right? Those are those things, and often unkind things we say to ourselves that flirt with imposter syndrome, an overabundance of trying to be perfect, a false belief that we have to always be available and always be on, right? So if you have those kinds of thoughts about yourself, that's your inner voice trying to make you small. We think about the outer voice, right? Those things that are said to us. Now, these sometimes can be very subtle things that are said, and sometimes they're actually really blatant, right? So it's things that people say to us that make us shrink, or we hear it and it makes us shrink and it makes us doubt ourselves. So an outer voice might be someone saying to you, like, you're really intimidating, or calm down, don't be so emotional. Or it might be, we don't know what to do with you, right? In my own career, I can tell you, I remember vividly a time when my inner voice made me feel small. I was working on this team, and at the time I had a new baby. I had 3 children, but my baby was probably like a year old. My other child was my son, then was like 5, and my oldest daughter was probably like 8. And there was an event at work. We had worked all day. We had a long meeting, and then the team was going to dinner afterwards. And I couldn't go to the team meeting because I needed to leave to go get my kids and bring them home. And I remember feeling so upset and literally had the whole FOMO, like I am missing out. Even though it was said like, hey, if you guys can't make it, it's fine. We know, like, we've been working all day. So if you can't make it to dinner, that's okay. No big deal. We'll see you in the morning. There was no pressure for me to be there. But I just felt like I was going to miss out. Like they were going to talk about something miraculous and I was going to miss it. So much so that I remember like going and picking up my children and being very harried and picking them up and like trying to get home really quick. And the whole time I'm driving to get the kids, I'm rushing, getting them home. And the whole time that I'm driving home, I'm literally trying to put through in my head, like, how can I get them home and then get back to the dinner? Right? Where it was going to be like an hour drive, like home, all the things. Like there was no way I was going to make this dinner. But I kept trying to go through this monologue in my head of like, well, if I do this and I do that and do this. And, you know, I got home and I was being short with my kids and I was like rushing them through, like trying to eat. My husband came home and I was being short with him. And he finally was like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I feel bad that I'm missing this dinner. And he said, why? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to be missing out. Like they're going to think that I'm not as dedicated because I'm not there. To the point where I was like texting my teammates, asking them like, how's it going? What are you guys eating? How are things going? And I found out the next morning, like they were all making fun of me, which they should have, because I was lame. What ended up happening, instead of me just being graceful and like recognizing the fact that I had responsibilities outside of work to my family, to my children, which quite frankly were the more important responsibilities, my inner voice kept making me feel small, like I'm not going to get promoted. I'm not going to be valued. I'm not going to be important enough. And they literally were like making jokes like, oh my gosh, you guys, here she goes. Let's guess what she's going to text next. Who's going to text next? And it was so embarrassing. So the next morning I was so embarrassed, right? So this is just like one example. Maybe you can relate. Like that's a way in which I made myself feel small. Thinking about that outer critic and a time where I allowed someone to make me feel small was I was on a team. I was new to a team. And a woman on the team that I was working with said to me, like you have so much passion and energy, you kind of are intimidating the team. And being a new teammate, like when I heard you're intimidating, that goes against all of my core values. My core values are rooted in respect, integrity, humility. And when she said to me, you're kind of intimidating, you're making everybody feel intimidated, I took that as I must be doing something wrong. I must be making people uncomfortable. And I gave a lot of power to this statement and to this person that said that to me. And so what did I do? At our next team meeting, I like overcompensated on making sure I was being very nice, making sure I was complimenting people. When I was giving direction for a project, I was posturing it with like, if that's okay with you guys, and if everyone's all right with this. And as a result, the direction I gave, like nobody understood. It was so unfocused. It was so unclear. And a few days later, I had one of my teammates come up to me and ask me like, what's wrong? Like you feel you're acting weird, right? And I realized that I was making myself different. I wasn't showing up as my best self because I received this feedback and I gave power to it without really asking the question, is that true? Right? And so if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed or feeling that you're making yourself small or feeling small, right? Because I've been there too, where I've walked into a room and I look around and I feel like maybe this isn't where I'm supposed to be, right? If you have that, if you feel that smallness, here's what I want you to do. The first thing I want to say is you can acknowledge the smallness without being small. So the first thing is ask yourself, is this something that I'm doing to myself, right? This feeling that I have, is this something I'm doing to myself? Is this my inner voice telling me something, right? Am I choosing unkind words? Am I choosing unrealistic beliefs? Am I creating a story of what is expected about my behavior or who I am with nothing that actually indicates that that's true? It's just some false belief I have to be perfect, to be available all the time, to be something that I'm not actually being asked to be or have been constructed to be. The second thing is, if the reason you're feeling small is not because of something that you said, ask yourself, am I giving power to someone who isn't worthy of this influence over my life? Am I giving power to someone who isn't worthy of influence in my life? Because we can receive feedback, and leading well is being open and receptive to feedback. We don't have to accept all the feedback that we're given. We get to choose what we do with that. And so if there's an outer critic, an outer voice that's making you feel small, ask yourself, why am I allowing this to have influence in my life? And then choose how you want to receive that. And so with this, I like to be guided with spirituality. I like to be guided with faith. And so a verse that I believe kind of speaks into this idea of getting clear on who we are, on embracing all of the abundance and the beauty and the light that we are. God's words are beauty. God's words are loving. God's words are kind words. And so I often choose to pray with a verse or two. I do a practice called Lectio Divina where I read a verse. I read it 3 times and just kind of sit quietly with the Holy Spirit to allow that to kind of overflow me. So I want to share a verse that I think speaks into this idea of overcoming this smallness and recognizing that you're really powerful. All that you need has already been given to you. You just have to believe it's there and trust in God's mighty hand in your life. And so for the prayer, I want to take a moment and get us centered. And I want to read to you the verse from Romans 12:2. So let's just take a moment here, take a deep breath in and blow that out. Maybe you're in your car and you're listening to this. So just take a moment to just be quiet. Just be still. And invite the Holy Spirit to transform you with His words. Romans 12:2 states, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect." I love that verse because it talks about transforming and renewing our mind. If you are feeling small and not powerful, now is the time to transform your mind, to transform your thoughts, transform your beliefs, and recognize that you are seen, you are loved, and you are worthy. I hope that this message speaks to you today, and that if it does, maybe you can share it with somebody else. Are you ready to lead well? Sign up for my newsletter or connect with me to have a personal consultation. Subscribe and like the show, and I'd be so grateful if you left a review. Ready to lead well or need some coaching and encouragement? Sign up for my newsletter or reach out for a personal consultation. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review.